Okay, so the list of incredible things that music can evoke within us by way of how it activates our nervous system and body is when people listen to music for a dedicated period of time each day of about 10 to 30 minutes. Some studies looked at as much as 60 minutes, but typically 10 to 30 minutes. What one finds is that there's some really nice studies that have showed that if people listen to anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes of music per day, the systems of the brain that respond specifically to movement, not just sound, but specifically to musical sounds, are intimately tied to the neural circuits of the body that generate movement. And this is especially important to understand when we get into our discussion about music and our sense of motivation. Okay, so the list of incredible things that music can evoke within us by way of how it activates our nervous system and body is starting to grow. Music causes changes within our bodily physiology that extends beyond the nervous system, although it has a relationship to the nervous system. In particular, there have been a lot of studies that have explored how music changes things like our blood pressure or how fast our heart is beating, our so-called resting heart rate. And here we've made some important discoveries in recent years. And when I say we, I don't mean my laboratory. I mean laboratories that focus on the relationship between music and our bodily physiology. Because we've long known that music can change various health metrics. There's some really nice studies that have showed that if people listen to anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes of music per day, and by the way, the selection of music in these studies ranged from everything from rock and roll to classical music to country music. Typically, these studies would ask subjects what their favorite music is, and then they would have them listen to that particular genre of music for anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes per day. And if you look at the meta-analyses of those studies, what you find is that almost all of them see some sort of significant effect. That is, some statistically significant shift in the bodily physiology of people that deliberately listen to music for 10 to 30 minutes per day. Not while doing anything else, but just listening to that music. They find, for instance, that their resting heart rate is reduced, if not during the period in which they're listening to the music, then after the time in which they're listening to the music. They find that their so-called heart rate variability tends to increase. For those of you that aren't familiar with heart rate variability, having increased heart rate variability is a good thing, and that's because heart rate variability reflects the sort of push and pull, or the balance rather, of the activation of the so-called sympathetic nervous system, which is the one sometimes called the fight or flight system, although I don't really like that nomenclature. The sympathetic nervous system, by the way, is not about emotional sympathy. It's what drives your heart rate higher. It tends to put us into activated states where we favor movement and motion and makes us alert, whereas the parasympathetic aspect of our nervous system is the portion of our autonomic nervous system, sometimes called the rest and digest system. The parasympathetic nervous system drives states of deeper relaxation, of calm. In any event, heart rate variability reflects a periodic breaking, a slowing down of heart rate and breathing and other aspects of our neural system function that works alongside with sympathetic activation. Think of sympathetic activation as an accelerator, parasympathetic activation as a brake. And when heart rate variability is higher, it reflects the fact that our parasympathetic nervous system is periodically engaging, it's getting activated and slowing our heart rate, slowing our breathing down. Music seems to have the effect of activating that parasympathetic aspect of our nervous system. And so we are pumping the brake every once in a while, slowing down our heart rate, slowing down our breathing. In other words, when people listen to music for a dedicated period of time each day of about 10 to 30 minutes, some studies looked at as much as 60 minutes, but typically 10 to 30 minutes, what one finds is that heart rate variability increases, not just during the period when they're listening to the music, this is very important, but also heart rate variability is increased around the clock in those subjects, even during sleep, making listening to 10 to 30 minutes of your favorite music each day not just what I would think to be an enjoyable protocol, if you could even call it a protocol. It's so enjoyable to listen to your favorite music that it feels almost inappropriate to call it a protocol, because protocol sounds kind of rigid, like you're imposing that on yourself. But if you need an excuse to listen to your favorite music for 10 to 30, maybe 60 minutes per day, and just attending to that music, not while doing anything else, which is what these studies had subjects do, well, indeed, that's been shown to increase heart rate variability around the clock, which we know is beneficial for your mental and physical health more generally. Okay, so if you want to get motivated, listening to music prior to doing something that you're trying to motivate to do is a good idea. That's what the data say. If you're trying to learn something that's cognitive, then requires reading, focus, and concentration. Silence, 40 hertz binaural beats. White noise or brown noise is probably best. And if you are going to listen to music, listening to music that includes instrumentals but not lyrics would be best. And listening to music that includes lyrics that you're very familiar with would be the worst condition. Now, with that said, listening to music while trying to do cognitive tasks can be detrimental toward learning that material. Turns out that if you listen to music in the breaks between trying to learn certain material, you can actually heighten your level of cognition and focus and your ability to learn. So I find this particularly cool. It's not that music is bad for focus and cognition and learning. It's that listening to music, especially music that you're familiar with, that includes lyrics, at the same time as trying to learn something else is not a good idea. But listening to music with lyrics, especially music with lyrics that you're familiar with, that you find particularly uplifting and motivating, is a cognitive and performance enhancer when you go back to doing that work in silence or perhaps while listening to white noise, brown noise, or 40 hertz binaural beats. So like so many things, the answer is not black and white. It's not that silence is better than music or that music is bad for learning. It turns out that listening to music, even music with lyrics you're very familiar with, can be highly beneficial for learning, but that you want to listen to that music in the breaks between these bouts of cognitive work. If you're somebody who is going to do, say, a 90-minute or even 60-minute or even 30-minute bout of work, and you are going to get up for a moment and use the restroom, or you're going to take a break in between bouts of work. So maybe you work for 30 minutes, take 10 minutes or 5 minutes off, or 90 minutes, take 30 minutes off. Listening to music in those breaks, it seems, can increase our ability to focus and to learn new material once we return to those bouts of cognitive focus. Now, when it comes to physical exertion, cardiovascular exercise, resistance training of any kind, many people, including myself, like to listen to music while performing that physical exercise or that physical exertion. The data on whether or not music improves physical performance is a bit mixed. Certainly, you can find studies that show that it improves physical output. Other studies will say that it doesn't make a difference. Other studies will say that it reduces physical output. However, this is a very important however, the type of physical exercise is not very well matched between those different studies. So this is something that I believe is going to be highly individual. In accordance with the published data, I mix it up. There are times when I will head out for a run or I will do a resistance training session and I will listen to music, usually an album all the way through or a playlist all the way through. And that's because I don't want to be going onto my phone very often. In fact, these days I use an older separate phone that doesn't have any text messaging or communication to the outside world, but it has music loaded into it or onto it that allows me to just listen to music so that I don't run the risk of getting distracted texting and doing things like that. I just want to focus on my physical exercise. I should say that phone also has audiobooks, podcasts, things I've downloaded to it. So it's a place where I can listen to things but not communicate with the outside world, at least while exercising. Some people do very well to listen to music literally in between and during their sets of resistance training throughout their entire runs. It's going to be individual. You have to figure out what's best for you.